Sometimes the world doesn't recognize power until it no longer asks for permission. And that's exactly where India stands today. She's not whispering to be heard. She's speaking with clarity, confidence, and a quiet force that says, "I've arrived." For too long, the United States looked at India as a potential partner, a rising giant, a spiritual land, a market of opportunities. But what we failed to truly grasp is that India no longer belongs to the future tense. She is not about to rise. She is already standing tall. We're talking about a nation launching space missions to the moon and Mars on budgets smaller than some Hollywood blockbusters. A country whose digital payment systems make Silicon Valley blink in disbelief. A society where engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs are being raised by the millions. And yet, for all of that brilliance, all of that strength, America still treats her like a side conversation, not the main dialogue. That's not just short-sighted, it's dangerous. Because every moment we hesitate to recognize India's arrival is a moment someone else steps in to acknowledge her worth. China sees it, Russia sees it, the Gulf sees it. But do we? Do we in the corridors of American power truly see that India isn't waiting in the hallway? She's already opened her own doors. We can't just shake hands, we have to walk beside her. Because the world is shifting, the power centers are moving, and if the U.S. thinks it can anchor itself only in yesterday's alliances, we will be left standing in history's shadows. And now, in this delicate hour of global tension and new empires being drawn, the U.S. must make a choice. Not a loud, dramatic choice, but a deep, strategic one. Who do we want beside us when the storm comes? Who do we want to build this fragile future with? Because allies built on convenience will break in chaos, but those built on mutual respect, they hold. And if you want someone who holds, who stands, who defends her borders while feeding her poor and launching satellites, you call India. That's the kind of partner America needs now more than ever. Not someone who mimics our policies, but someone who mirrors our values. In a world teetering toward control and coercion, India still fights through democracy. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's imperfect. But you know what? So is ours. And maybe that's exactly why we belong together, because we both understand the cost of freedom. We both know the fight for dignity. We both fall and rise, yet never stop moving. And when I say we need India, I'm not just talking about strategic deals or defense cooperation. I'm talking about soul. I'm talking about shared stories, shared pain, and shared courage, because at the heart of every nation are its people. And the Indian people, they don't want to be saved. They want to be seen. Not as someone's project, not as a number, not as an economic scorecard, but as a force, a living, breathing, billion-strong force of resilience and intelligence. And once you see that, once you feel that pulse, you know in your gut that this is not just a country you partner with, it's a country you stand beside. And yet standing beside means being present in every sense of the word, not just on paper, not just when the polls agree, but in every major conversation where the world's future is being decided. Because without India's voice in those rooms, that future becomes lopsided. And without America beside her, that voice is challenged by others who don't share her commitment to openness or fairness. So the next time we measure partnerships, let's stop counting trade figures and military drills. Let's count principles. Let's count people. Because when two nations share a dream of dignity, prosperity, and democracy, that isn't a coincidence. That's destiny. Because destiny doesn't just show up in headlines or summit photos, it lives in the values we defend when no one's watching. And right now, as this world grows colder with conflict, with manipulation, with regimes tightening their grip and fear spreading like wildfire, the United States needs more than powerful allies, it needs principled ones. You don't choose your neighbor, but you do choose your partners. And in India, the U.S. has something extraordinary, a country that doesn't just talk about democracy, it wrestles with it every single day, loudly, publicly, fiercely. That kind of raw democratic spirit, that messy beauty of protest, debate, diversity, that is not weakness, that is strength. That is what makes India stand apart in a region surrounded by autocracies and military regimes. And that's what makes her invaluable to America right now, not just in strategy, but in soul. Because the truth is, when the storm hits, and it is hitting, your real friends aren't the ones who nod in silence. They're the ones who speak the hard truths, who challenge you, who remind you of who you are when you forget. And I want you to imagine something with me, a world where America loses that kind of ally. What happens then? Who speaks up in forums that need moral voices, not just military might? Who bridges the divide between East and West with both intellect and integrity? If India steps back from the United States, or worse, turns elsewhere for support, then the balance of moral power begins to tilt. And we're not just talking politics here, we're talking about the soul of the 21st century, because as fear rises, freedom dims, and I know what happens when people act from fear. They turn inward, they close off, they forget their better angels, and in that space, that terrifying silence, the strong men rise. But when India and America stand together, what we're doing is holding the line. We are saying, in no uncertain terms, that democracies can be different, loud, chaotic, but they are resilient, they are worthy, and they still work. And what's even more important, especially in this moment, is that we remember how fragile these freedoms are, that they are not guaranteed, that they don't survive because we wish them to. They survive because we fight for them, because we nurture them, because we invest in partnerships that reflect them. And if the U.S. forgets that, if we chase deals with those who suppress voices while ignoring the partner who amplifies them, then we lose more than influence, we lose our own reflection. Let's be clear, India will not bow to anyone. She has fought colonizers, rewritten her own identity, stood tall through economic upheaval and border tensions, and still she rises on her own terms. She won't be bullied, and she won't be bought. That's what makes her rare. That's what makes her precious, and that's exactly why she must be cherished, not managed, because in this noisy world full of shifting loyalties, India is one of the few who still believe that the path to greatness doesn't come from control, but from conviction, from dialogue, not domination. And if we in the United States claim to stand for freedom, for equality, for dignity, then it's not just important to hold on to India, it's imperative. So the question isn't if we need India, it's whether we have the courage to build something deeper than politics with her. Something real, something that lasts beyond administrations and elections. Because in the end, when the fires burn out and the noise fades away, what remains is not who had the biggest military or the most GDP, it's who stood for something, who stood together.
And when we talk about standing for something, we must also ask, where is the future being born? Not just the political future, but the economic one, the dreams, the industries, the revolutions that will shape how we live, work, and connect for generations to come. And in that conversation, India is no longer in the waiting room, she's in the delivery room, she's creating it, breathing it, pushing it forward every single day with the determination of 1 billion hearts that refuse to be left behind. That's not some idealistic fantasy, it's the hard, undeniable reality of where this planet is heading. And America, with all its wealth and legacy, must recognize that the story of global prosperity is being written in many languages now, including Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, and yes, in the new dialect of digital innovation that's pouring out of Indian mind. There's something remarkable happening when a child in a rural Indian village with patchy internet and secondhand textbooks learns Python on a borrowed smartphone, and within a few years that same child is contributing code to a startup that's changing lives halfway across the globe. That's not just development, that's transformation, that's a generation leapfrogging obstacles America hasn't even had to imagine. And if we're not paying attention, if we're not listening to that heartbeat, we're going to miss the greatest economic shift since the Industrial Revolution. This isn't about outsourcing, this is about outdreaming. And I know someone might say, but Oprah, we've got our own innovators, our own systems, our own industries. Yes, we do. But the truth is we cannot outgrow this global moment alone. We can't be the best by ourselves anymore. The new world doesn't reward isolation, it rewards collaboration. And India is not asking for charity, she's offering collaboration. She's saying, let's build together, let's innovate together, let's find new frontiers of AI, of renewable energy, of biotech, of digital infrastructure, not as competitors, but as equals. Because when we ignore India, we don't just miss a market, we miss a mindset. A mindset that says constraints are not limitations, they're invitations. That kind of thinking, that grit is what built America once, and it's what's building a new India now. If we're wise, we won't just admire it from afar, we'll weave ourselves into it, not by control, not by dominance, but by respect, by showing up, by learning, and by offering what we've learned in return. Imagine the beauty of this partnership. American capital with Indian creativity, American research labs with Indian talent, American dreams expanded by Indian execution. This is not about taking, it's about multiplying. It's about building something so massive, so meaningful, that it becomes a beacon to the world, a living, breathing example of what two democracies, diverse, complex, and driven, can do when they walk side by side. But that means we have to make the choice now, not in the future, not after the next election, now, because China is making moves. Europe is pivoting. The race for influence is not waiting, and if we treat India as just another option, we will watch as she turns gracefully, unapologetically, to those who see her worth first. And when that door closes, we won't just lose access, we'll lose trust, we'll lose momentum, we'll lose the kind of growth that only happens when hearts, minds, and missions align. Because you see, what's growing in India isn't just a tech economy, it's a belief that tomorrow can belong to anyone bold enough to build it. And if America wants to be part of that tomorrow, then we better show India today that we see her not as a backup plan, but as a partner in destiny. And if we don't show India that partnership today, we risk something far more dangerous than just a missed opportunity. We risk creating a vacuum that will be filled by forces with no interest in freedom, no stake in human dignity, no patience for democracy. Because let's not be naive here. China is watching, Russia is waiting, and they are not wasting time. They are not hesitating. They are offering deals, building roads, flooding countries with infrastructure, with data centers, with ports, with promises that come dressed as partnerships but carry a quiet pride. And if America steps back while those hands are being extended toward India, we won't just be losing influence, we'll be losing ground, strategic, moral, and spiritual ground. You see, the world doesn't just run on economics, it runs on alignment, on shared vision. And if India starts aligning herself with autocracies, with powers who do not blink when journalists are jailed or dissent is crushed, then the dream of a free, balanced, multipolar world begins to fade, because India is not just a nation, she's a counter. She is the only true democratic challenger to China in both scale and ambition, and that balance, that is what has kept the world from tipping into a darkness we may not crawl out of. And don't misunderstand me, India won't become anybody's puppet. She's far too proud, too old, too wise for that. But influence doesn't always need to be overt. It seeps in slowly through technology deals, energy contracts, trade dependencies. One port here, one 5G tower there, one silence at a critical vote. And one day you wake up and realize a trusted partner is now speaking a different language, one that echoes back control, not cooperation. That's not a prediction. That's the pattern we've seen across continents. And if we let India drift into that orbit, not because she chose it, but because we didn't show up, we will have only ourselves to blame. This isn't about fear-mongering, this is about foresight, because I've seen what happens when strong nations forget who their friends are. I've seen what happens when we assume loyalty without offering love. That's how marriages break, that's how partnerships dissolve, that's how empires fall, not with a bang but with a shrug. And right now, if America shrugs off India's importance, if we treat her with transactional interest instead of transformational trust, we may wake up to a world where our values are outnumbered and our voices drowned, because Russia won't ask India about press freedom, China won't care about civil rights, and if they gain the influence we give away, it's not just India who loses, it's the world, because when the biggest democracy walks toward the shadows, the light dims for all of us. But it doesn't have to be that way. We still have a choice. We can choose to stand with India, not just in joint military drills or economic forums, but in spirit, in shared resistance against a world that's closing in, trying to tell free nations that they're outdated, that they're weak, that democracy is too slow for progress. But India proves every single day that progress and freedom can walk hand in hand, even when the path is hard. And if America stands beside her, two great democracies can light the way for the rest. Because this is not just about India drifting toward autocracy, it's about who stands up for democracy when it's under attack. And if we in the United States truly believe that freedom is still worth fighting for, then we must believe India is worth holding close, not with fear but with faith. And faith, my friends, faith means showing up, not when it's easy, not when the headlines are good, but when the world is uncertain, when trust is fragile, and when the stakes are far bigger than politics. Because the truth is, we're long past the time for symbolic gesture. We're long past the moment where warm words and handshake summits are enough. India doesn't need America to pat her on the back. She needs America to stand shoulder to shoulder and say, we see you, we value you, and we are in this together, not for show but for substance. Because how many times in the past have we seen Washington send a delegation, sign a defense deal, take the photo, and then disappear? How many times has India been treated like a backup plan, a plan B if China becomes too threatening or Europe too divided? But India is not a substitute. She is not a second choice. She is a superpower in her own right. And if we keep treating her like a bonus instead of a backbone, we are going to lose something irreplaceable, not just strategically, but spiritually. You see, partnership is not about perfection. It's not about agreeing on every single issue. It's about standing in the same direction even when the road bends. And for that to happen, America needs to open its heart wider. We need to go beyond deals and start building dreams together. We need to invite India into the rooms where the world's future is being written, not as an observer, but as a co-author. Because when you recognize someone's worth, you don't keep them waiting in the lobby. You bring them to the table. You listen as much as you speak. You ask questions. You learn. You grow together. And that's the shift we must make now. We have to stop looking at India as a project to manage and start seeing her as a mirror that reflects who we, as Americans, say we are. We say we believe in freedom. So does India. We say we believe in human dignity, in innovation, in resilience, in pluralism. So does India. But if we don't back those words with bold and consistent action, then we are not only letting her down, we are betraying our own idea. Because the stakes are so much bigger than trade numbers or diplomatic wins. This is about creating a world where the future is not dictated by a single power, but shaped by shared values. A world where the rising generation in New Delhi and in New York can dream without borders. A world where the might of a nation is not measured by its ability to dominate, but by its willingness to collaborate. And make no mistake, India will rise, with or without America. She is too determined, too disciplined, too driven to be stopped. But the question is, will we rise with her? Will we walk beside her, not just as allies, but as equal architects of a better world? Because when India sees that we are not just investing in her economy, but in her people, when she knows we are not just applauding her progress, but respecting her sovereignty, then we earn something that no treaty can guarantee. And once you earn that trust, it becomes something powerful. It becomes a bridge that no adversary can break, a bond that outlasts elections, outshines headlines, and outlives the doubt. That is what true partnership looks like. That is what the United States must offer now, not out of fear of losing, but out of faith in what we can build together.